Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the third annual Cannabis Consumer Research webinar brought to you by Cannabis360 and Mass Live Media. Our event today is held in partnership with Drive Research and presented by Triton Technologies. We'll be reserving time at the end of the webinar for any questions you have about the research, so feel free to send questions in the chat throughout the webinar and to have them answered at the end. Today's webinar is presented by Triton Technologies. Triton Technologies provides enterprise-wide IT solutions for thousands of users in the cannabis industry. Our speakers today are Garrett Charter, Vice President of Sales at Mass Live Media, the Massachusetts division of Cannabis360, and Brian Champ, Senior Research Manager at Drive Research. Gareth, I'll pass it off to you.
Thanks, Brian. And welcome, everybody. Great to have this big crowd here. We've got over 100 folks registered today from all across the cannabis industry here in Massachusetts, dispensaries, ancillary services. We've got some elected officials, and we've got folks from some other states as well, too, who obviously want to hear more about how a more mature cannabis marketplace is developing. So really pleased to have everybody here. We're going to try and keep this to a tight 30 minutes because I know everybody's on a busy schedule, but we think we have some real actionable things to talk to you about today. Quickly, we'll explain. Mass Live Media is the marketing agency, the full-service digital marketing agency of masslive.com here in Massachusetts. Masslive.com, the news site, has been covering the cannabis news and industry for 7 years plus since the idea of legal cannabis first became a possible reality here in Massachusetts. Mass Live Media, our agency division, our agency side, has been working with clients and helping them with their marketing challenges in the cannabis space since early 2019. We've worked with dozens and dozens of dispensaries across the state, as well as ancillary businesses, and are on the sort of leading edge of innovative marketing solutions with some of our partners and some of our proprietary options that are compliant, meet local regulations, but deliver the cannabis space really effective marketing. Cannabis360 is the brand that sort of connects to our entities in other states. Mass Live Media rolls up to a parent company, Advanced Local, which operates in many other states around the country, including places like Michigan, Oregon, New Jersey, New York. Cannabis360 is our way to connect and bring all together our cannabis experience, our cannabis knowledge in these other markets, and really offer the industry across the whole country, innovative solutions. Obviously, we have some multi-state operators that operate in many of these states, but there's just lots that can be gathered and learned across the cannabis landscape. And with the election this week, with the votes this week, we know that continues to expand the number of states that cannabis and retail cannabis is becoming legal. So Cannabis360 is our entity that works across the entire state, country, excuse me, but we're one and the same. We're the same folks. That said, I'd like to now introduce our partner in this research, the third year that we've done this research, Drive Research, and let Brian take it from here and talk to you a lot about the research that we did, again, for the third fall in a row and some of the great stuff that we found out.
Here, thank you so much. Again, my name is Brian Champ. I'm the Senior Research Manager at Drive Research. We are based out of Syracuse, New York. We are a full stack research company. What we have prepared for you today is a dive into the cannabis market all through Massachusetts. What are we going to be covering today? The background of the survey. We're going to talk about the profile of the respondents, consumption trends, factors in choice when purchasing, dispensary consumer behavior trends, drivers and barriers to delivery services, data on marketing dispensaries, and areas of opportunity. have about 15 slides today. With that said, let's jump right into it and get started. And if you would, please hold the questions. We will answer the questions at the end, but feel free to put them in the chat as we're going through. The survey itself was 29 questions. We fielded 29 total questions across 400 responses. We capped it off at 400. It took about 5 minutes to complete with a margin of error of 5%. The margin of error, I'll explain just real quickly why that's important. What that means is if we took the same survey and refilled it again to a similar panel of people, the measurable results would be plus or minus 5% of the results that you see. And I'll be sure to call that out in a few of the slides because it is a relevant statistic to keep in mind. For our respondent profile, we did get a mix of ages, anywhere from 21 to 80. It's a mix of people from Western, Central, and Eastern Massachusetts. We did ask the people the requirement was for them to have used cannabis in the past 12 months, shopped at a cannabis dispensary in the past 12 months, and or had used a delivery service in the past 12 months. There's also a mix of recreational and medical users profiled, as well as enthusiasts and non-enthusiasts profiled in the report. The first question, typically, how often do you use cannabis? And this was a select one where the people could choose one option. Every day was the biggest one. We had almost half the people, 49%, that said every day. A couple of things to note on the slide. This is a 1% increase from last year. So 49 versus 48%. We also saw about a little more than a third, 36%, expect to actually increase their cannabis usage across the next 2 years. Therefore, there's some area of opportunity there. Reasons why the people aren't using cannabis more: 1, it's too expensive; 2, they don't like it enough; or 3, for health and medical concerns. How is the consumption of cannabis trending? How are people using it? On the first 2 stacks, what you see here is we actually added 3 years to get a better idea since they were so prominent. We have edibles and smoking. Edibles was 79% this year and 75% for smoking this year. As you can see, it peaked in 2021. That's where we saw the highest figures at 81 for edibles and 78 for smoking. So it has tailed off a little bit, but again, those percentages are within the margin of error. So I wanted to make sure that we make that known. Another quick note, drinks was 18% this year. This was not asked in the survey last year, so this also could be an area of opportunity in the future as well. We have, for generational usage, Gen Z and Gen X are more likely to smoke or vape, while millennials and boomers are more likely to use edibles. Cannabis preferences. Question was asked, do you have a preference for a specific type of cannabis? Select one. The top one, about a third of the people came in and said a blend or hybrid. Next, 25% or 1 in 4 said sativa, which is really linked to the recreational use, which we'll get to in a second. About 1 in 5 said no preference. 17% said indica, which is more linked to the medical. And only 5% said that they're unaware of a preference or unaware of a type. As far as recreational use goes, the vast majority of people said they use it recreationally in our survey, 77%, and this was a jump of 5% from last year, while about 23% said they prefer cannabis for medical reasons. Cannabis influences. What influenced you the most to try cannabis? And this was, again, a select one question. We have first, number 1, recreational experience, 32%. Then we have a recommendation. This could be from a family, friend, etc. That came in at 21%. Curiosity, that's about 1 in 5 people, which was also the same, was improving wealth or well-being, about 20%. Wanted to try something new was 6%, and other was marked as 1%. I believe there's a couple people that marked it as other. 69%, more than 2/3 of users now more than 2/3 of respondents were cannabis users 5 years ago, which is down from 72% in 2020. So we still have a nice chunk of people represented there. This also represents a nice area of opportunity. Impacts of cannabis spending. This is perhaps the most, at least in my opinion, most interesting slide with some really, really good takeaways here. Since began using cannabis, have you spent less money on any of the following items? And it was select all that apply, so people could choose more than one thing. The key takeaway here is 60% of people, 6 in 10 cannabis users, are spending less on other items since starting to use cannabis. This is interesting because this shows consumer habits and trends are shifting towards cannabis as more laws are going into effect as far as legalization is concerned, and people are consuming more. What's directly impacted the most, interestingly, are anything that's a liquid or a beverage. So we have liquor, beer, and wine are all the top three where people are buying less of. And then it tails off there. It goes to cigarettes, medications, cigars, and then chewing tobacco. 4 in 10 people said none of the above. However, again, 60% is a significant number of people that are shifting their spending. Factors in choice of dispensaries. What factor or factors matter most to you when choosing where to purchase your cannabis from a dispensary? We started this off with a verbatim or open-ended question where people could hand type their responses in there, and that's what you see on the left. The themes that came out of there the most were price, location, quality, variety, selection, convenience, availability, etc. This was further reinforced on the right. If you look at the chart on the right with an aided question where we asked people to select all that apply given a list. The top three, which are frankly the most important, what we see are price at 71% for this year, which is an increase over last year. High quality and stock, 61%, which was an increase over last year. And availability of products and selections, which is also an increase over last year. So the top three this year were also the top three last year, and each of them saw an increase. One thing to point out that's also interesting is the comfort level and ease of shopping, as well as the ease and access of getting in and out of dispensary. Both of those fell outside of the margin of error. And that's important because the shoppers are actually not thinking this is an important trait as it used to be. So it's falling down at a level of importance, which we'll also address in a future slide. So really what it comes back to is price is king, and quality's got to be there, and the availability has got to be there. Feelings and emotions when shopping. Which of the following words best describe your feelings or emotions during your most recent visit to a cannabis dispensary? And again, this is a select all that apply where people can choose multiple things. The top few that we see are friendly, welcome, easy, safe, and approachable. Friendly is at 69%, and that's within a margin of error last year, while welcomed was about the same as last year. Easy had fallen off, which actually matches what we saw in the previous slide with the decline, where that's not as important as it used to be. Approachable is also a good one there at 45%. And then it tails down to supported, ordinary, unique, and just goes down the list that way. When it comes to dispensaries of choice, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 4 and 5 being very loyal, people in the survey actually scored 42%, saying dispensary of choice, 42% was very important to them. And that was actually higher than the brand, which was 29% this year. So people are more loyal to dispensary than versus the brand. Buying from a dispensary. Typically, how often do you buy cannabis from a dispensary? 1 in 5 people, about 21%, buy cannabis from a dispensary about once a week. About 25%, which is frankly the highest number we have, is once every few days. Once every few weeks. Once a month at 24%. 17% said once every 2 to 3 months, and then it falls off there to 13% for once every 4 to 12 months, or roughly quarterly. So once a week is very important. What would influence you to try a dispensary? Which of the following would most influence your decision to try a dispensary? Select all that apply. And again, this is a range where we give people a range. They can go in and choose any of the options that apply to them. Sales deals on products was 62%, was far and away the top influencer. And again, people looking for price, looking for value, looking to maximize what they can with their dollars. A new high quality brand of 43%. And then it falls off there to 29% for a dispensary being new and different, which I'll touch on here in just a second. And then we have online ordering, and also one that gives back to the community at 27%. Traveling to New Area on vacation, 26%. And then it falls off there to appearances, indoor and outdoor, etc. However, another takeaway in this slide to keep in mind, 54% do not believe all cannabis dispensaries offer the same products at the same price. So therefore, the majority of people think that there is variety out there, and that's interesting to them. Best sources to learn about a dispensary. Which of the following sources would be the best way for you to learn about a new cannabis dispensary? Select all that apply. Number one was personal relationships, and this goes back to referrals, which we had seen earlier on a previous one for people trying cannabis. That actually was the largest increase as well. So that jumped 8% year over year, now at 53%. Online research, going to different websites and seeing advertising, 49%. Social media, interestingly, at 48%, fell 7% year over year. Then we have cannabis publications at 32%, so about 1 in 3 people. And then it falls off there to traditional media at 22%, email newsletters at 20%, and then other. Also want to call out with the email newsletters. This is a really good resource for dispensaries to take advantage of because they already have the emails collected. And I would say use them. And this actually has increased year over year. So it's sort of a self-service resource at your fingertips, and it's ready to be used. How appealing are home delivery services? And we asked this on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 not appealing, 5 being very appealing. 58% rated home delivery services very appealing at a scale of 1 to 5. So when you take the 4s and the 5s together, mash them together, 58% of them, the majority, said very appealing. About 1 in 6 people have used a delivery service before, so it's 17%. And 78% of those that have used a delivery service said that they were very satisfied with the service. Cannabis consumption lounges. And we know that this is an emerging area of opportunity. They could be coming soon to a place near you. The question was asked, how interested are you in visiting a cannabis consumption lounge? And again, this is on a 1 to 5 rating, where 1 was least and then 5 is most. We took the 4s and the 5s and put them together. Very interesting, somewhat interested and very interested, put them together. We got 59% are interested and very interested in visiting a cannabis lounge. Just 10% scored a 1 or a 2. And with our middle ground at 22%, right there, that scored a 3. And this is actually the last slide that I have for you guys today. I know it was 15 slides and we got through it pretty quickly, but I will go ahead and kick this back to Gareth for any other closing comments, and we'll set up a Q&A session for you.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that. That was a lot of information going through relatively quickly. I want to give you some takeaways, some insights, and then we'll leave a few minutes here for questions. First off, before I get into the details here, big picture insights that we take away from doing this. And as we've said a couple times, this is our 3rd year doing this at the same time of year. One of the things that we take away from this is there seems to be a settling, a maturing, whatever term you want to use, in the Massachusetts marketplace, which I think is understandable given the length of time that we've now had legal, retail, recreational, the number of open dispensaries, the number of options that consumers have, how long they've had to try this. What I mean by that is we saw some bigger swings on some of these questions from 2020 going into 2021 than we did this time, from 21 going into 22. As you saw in Brian's presentation, There was a lot of sort of consistency, particularly when you factor in the margin for error. Another big picture takeaway would say is there is real loyalty and real commitment from a big base of the cannabis consumer in Massachusetts. That comes through in a couple ways, we think. When you see that 6 out of 10 consumers are telling you that they are spending less money now on something else, whether that's alcohol, whether that's cigarettes, that is not an expansion of the marketplace, so to speak, where I will try something, I'm curious about something, but then maybe I'll go back to my usual consumer behavior. That is consumers telling you that they have changed their consumer behavior. They are spending less money on something else as a result of this offering. That is a real signal to some real consistency and the long-term, viability of this industry. Another one that's interesting along those lines is, you might recall, Brian pointed out that about 75% of our responders are pretty much regular shoppers. Okay, they're either going daily or a few times a month or at least once a month. That kind of frequency. So again, consistency, commitment. Obviously, the opportunity and the upside for everybody in this industry is those that don't fall into that bucket, those that have not tried cannabis yet. We didn't see a big variation in first-time users. There was a stat that Brian talked about that said that folks who identified as using 5 years ago or prior to it being legal dropped from 72% to 69%. You look at that the other way, what that's saying is about 3% more people saying, I've only started consuming this product since it's been legal. And that's not even that's within the margin of error. So not a big change from last year in people saying, okay, now that cannabis is legal in Massachusetts, I'm now using the product. So that's clearly where the opportunity is. And that ladders up to some of these marketing insights, which I'll point out here. We believe that, it came through pretty loud that price and product is now how people are making their decisions. It's not about convenience so much. It's not how far I have to drive. It's not whether I know where there is one. Did somebody tell me there's one off this exit or not when I'm on the highway? Is there parking when I get there? I think consumers have figured all that out, and they're making their decisions now based on price and product. So marketing needs to pivot to that. Marketing needs to really be about your selection, your deals, and what is going to resonate with people who are thinking about price and product. Brian pointed out, shoppers do see differences. More than half of our respondents, the question was actually phrased, do you agree with this statement? Are all cannabis dispensaries pretty much the same? And more than half of our respondents disagreed with that. They said, no, we do not think that they're all the same. That's really good news for people in the industry, but you got to tell your story. Okay. We believe that clearly, video and other forms of long form content and a lot of more creative marketing executions and ad executions connect very well to that, to you telling your story, showing how you differentiate yourself, as opposed to something very simple, perhaps like maybe just a billboard. And then one other similar point on that, really interesting that the efficacy or the value of your email database compared with the efficacy of a billboard. Literally around equal responses of what people say that generated an action to them to go to a cannabis dispensary. So clear takeaway from that is build your email database. Got to do things to increase that database because it's a really valuable resource for you. It gives you flexibility on point number one, where you can market price more so in an opted-in email. And we would say text and mobile goes hand in hand with email. We've started this year working with some terrific texting solutions, custom texting solutions for some of our clients. So a lot in here, a lot of takeaways. We'll open it up here to see if there's any questions in the chat. And before we close, we'll say, hey, if you want to know more here, we're going to put up a slide here at the end with our contact information. If you'd like to get into more of the details here, if you'd like to ask more questions about some of the stuff that you saw, reach out to us here. You see email address for myself, my colleague Brett Polsky here. You can reach us directly at these email addresses or these phone numbers. You can also just visit Cannabis360, which is at cannabis360.us. And there's ways to get in touch with us there. Is that a question in the chat there? Right.
Yeah, we have one question. Does the research show how many people are familiar / unfamiliar with the options out there? Is there an opportunity to clarify or explain the types of products and marketing to the public?
I think we touched on that a little bit just now. Brian, any thoughts there on the familiarity with the various options out there to folks?
Well, with the familiarity, we didn't ask a question exactly related to that here because every single person in the study is a cannabis user, and so we didn't. That's actually a fair point to ask a question around that. Around that, the one point where we did sort of touch on it was around the different strains, different types, and so we've got the sativas and things like that in there, and people do know that they are familiar with those brands. So that's one area where it was, but we could perhaps dive deeper into that in the future.
Yeah, thank you for that. We've got another question here asking, when it comes to marketing your dispensary or a brand, is there an advantage to one over the other? I think the quick answer to that is it's got to be both. You know, it's such an emerging industry. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to watch over the next few years how much brand loyalty of product is developed. People go out seeking a specific brand, a specific edible, something of that nature, and they don't care that much where they buy it. Or is it that experience of the certain dispensary, the bud tenders, the knowledge of the people there, the variety? You know, where does that loyalty tend to go more in the coming years? The brand identity is really just emerging. I'm sure everybody on this call realizes that we're starting to see celebrities and athletes wrap themselves around brands. So that's going to be fascinating to watch. We'll probably ask more questions about that next year. But the short answer is you got to do both. You got to market both right now and sort of see where people are making their decisions. Another one here. How were they recruited for the survey? It was done through social. The survey participants were found through social. How can dispensaries and brands create those relationships with consumers and community outside of their brick and mortar? This is a great question, and one we could probe on more, particularly where you saw we had a data point that said that that was a differentiator for some consumers. They like to see that. You know, there certainly are many dispensaries that we see getting involved in their communities, sponsoring events, hosting in-person events that might have music and food or things of that nature. You know, I would say, you know, get out there, you know, talk to other businesses, talk to chambers of commerce. I know in the state of Connecticut has created a cannabis chamber of commerce, which I think is fascinating. So I would just encourage folks to continue to explore these things and look for opportunities to get more involved in your community. Clearly, as the stigma continues to drop, you know, the opportunities to do these kind of things will increase. One of our clients a year ago had to bring your dog to the dispensary and take, you know, holiday photos with your dog. And I think they had a partner on site that had pet CBD products. And there's just so much. There's just so many opportunities to do that kind of stuff. What else we got? With cannabis marketing, is it better to target based on related content or based on the interest of the person viewing the ad? Is there opportunity in marketing to those who are managing chronic pain, such as arthritis or conditions? I'll take the first part of that. You know, there are obviously some regulations around 21 plus and around you know, not making health claims, unfounded health claims. So we that's one of the reasons to work with professionals in your marketing is to make sure that you're compliant to those. So we do that. We age gate that. Certainly some contextual targeting, as the questioner asked, is having your ads around certain kinds of content makes a lot of sense. Whether it's just straight cannabis news or whether it's other content, you know, that we think that might appeal to cannabis folks, whether it's music or events. Brian, any thoughts on that? Anything hit you about that?
So I would say, just anecdotally, I think there's around 20% of people in the United States that use cannabis in some shape, way, or form, and that's a lot of people when you think about it. And therefore, you don't necessarily have to be in and around cannabis content. I think it's starting to turn a little more mainstream. And again, what Gareth said, reach out to your marketing partners and use collected behavior and other information that's out there, other data and resources to build custom targets in order to reach some of these people, such as people that have chronic pain or conditions. I know that there's a lot of laws around the medical piece of that, but you can still build some targets of people like that would be a very viable or likely consumer of that.
Great. Well, we want to be conscious of people's time here. So again, I'll just mention here, you see our email addresses and our phone numbers here on the screen. I'm also putting in the chat our URL, cannabis360.us. Lots of ways to get in touch with us there. If you want to go deeper on some of this, reach out to us, including an executive summary. We're going to be producing, there was a question earlier in the chat about just sending out the slides. We have an executive summary of this research that we're producing that if you get in touch with us, we can make available to you as well. So thank you, Brian. I want to thank our sponsor again, Triton Technologies. Thank everybody for taking the time today and continuing to get smarter in this space, and look forward to talking to you all again down the road. Have a great afternoon, everybody.